Do you struggle in the tennis match when you have to play an opponent that's lower ranked than you or a player that's higher ranked than you and is supposed to win the match? Hi, I'm Dr. Patrick Cohn with Jaclyn Ellis. We're mental performance coaches from Peak Performance Sports at peaksports.com. Today, we're going to give you some tips on how to approach your matches if you're playing someone that's ranked higher or lower. This is the Tennis Psychology Podcast. So, Jaclyn, a lot of players struggle with when they have to play an opponent that is lower ranked with them. I think because they're expected to win. Let's talk about the challenges with that tennis player first.
Yes, big challenge here is a lot of times the parent might even make a comment, hey, this opponent is lower ranked than you, you should win. You should win. Or I have no doubt that you can win. And the athlete might view that as an expectation, and all of a sudden they're feeling pressure before the match has even started.
Yeah, I think they're also worried about going back to the academy and telling them, well, I lost to this opponent that I was supposed to, that everybody knew that player was supposed to win against that opponent too. So I think they worry about the result in the aftermath and what comes with that, beyond those expectations you talked about with the parent too. What about on the other side, where you're playing an opponent that's better, maybe higher ranked? Is that an easier situation, or can that be challenging too?
Definitely can be challenging as well. I think many tennis players prefer to play higher ranked opponents because they don't feel as much pressure. But what happens is if they are performing better than expected and they become aware of that, it sort of surprises them. I'm playing better. I didn't think I was going to beat this opponent. And now they get caught up in who's winning, who's losing, and it changes their mindset for the rest of that match. They no longer are playing the same game plan. They might get too excited or again slip into that comfort zone because they're doing better than they thought.
Yeah. I think the other challenge is pre-match. If a tennis player goes in there pre-match thinking, well, I'm probably going to lose to this opponent, they're higher seeded or higher ranked than me, I think that's going to have a big effect on their mindset starting the match, whether they're going to play more passively or safe and just try to be a backboard, or whether they're going to go in there and try to slap winners, every ball against the opponent, just because they think that's the only way to win. Don't you think that player, they have to have the belief once they go into the match that they can win against that opponent?
Absolutely. And you hit on a great point. They could play it safe, be overly aggressive, or they may not even want to put in full effort because they're assuming the opponent is going to win, right?
Yeah, which I think is a protection mechanism.
Right.
If I don't try fully, it's okay if I lose, which I think goes into the tank mentality, right? Well, if I don't try in the second set or the third set, then it's okay if I lose the match. Yeah. So let's start with some tips for playing higher ranked opponents when you feel that pressure to win or you're expected to win. What's the best way for players to approach that?
You mean for lower ranked opponents?
Yes.
Or for lower ranked opponents?
When you're playing lower ranked opponents, you're expected to win.
Right. So number one, we want to remove that expectation. The UTR or the rankings, it's not the end. So just because you might be ranked higher doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to win that match. I tell my athletes it's anybody's game anytime. That is why you're playing the match. In this moment, let's see who's who can come out with a win in this time. You're going to want to approach the match with full confidence, just like any other match. It doesn't matter who your opponent is. And if they are lower ranked, maybe you can use that as an advantage.
Yeah. I'll tell a quick story. I was with my daughter at a regional in Florida, in South Florida, and there was some really good tennis players there. At the time, it was called the designated. I don't know what they call it today. And she had to play a top 10 player in the second round. And she didn't know the girl. She hadn't played the girl. She didn't know the girl's ranking or seeding. And she went out and she ended up playing a really solid match on the clay against the girl. She was obviously struggling, right? And my daughter at the time was only like ranked 30th or so, 35th in the state. And so she beat this top 10 player, and I think partly because she didn't know that player was a better player. didn't know she was higher ranked. And I asked her after the match, did you know she's a top 10 player in the state? And she said, no, I had no idea. So she was pretty surprised when I told her that. And back to the UTR, I know they use UTR today. I think a lot of it has to do with how many tournaments your opponent's playing, right? Or how many tournaments you're playing. Because you can get more points, you can get higher UTR if you are playing more matches consistently and have more opportunity to beat quality players, then your UTR is going to go up. So it doesn't make sense to look at UTR and rankings and seedings. To me, it makes a lot of sense to go out, have a game plan for that particular player, and have plan A, plan B, plan C in what you're going to do. Just go out and execute your game plan, and don't label the opponent. Don't label the opponent as higher UTR, higher seed, higher rank. That doesn't do any good with you being able to execute your game plan.
I agree. Anything can happen on that day. Your opponent could have their A game or B game or C game as well.
They can get tired. They might get injured, God forbid, but they might get frustrated. You just never know what's going to happen on the other side of the net. And that's, I think, our points for playing that higher quality player. You never know what's going to happen when you're playing that higher ranked or higher seeded player, because your game simply might match up well with their style of play. Maybe you're great against like a baseliner. Maybe you're great against a serve and a volleyer. Maybe that's your game, and you match up well against that opponent. That's how you beat higher ranked players. Plus, obviously, keeping your mind in the game, right?
Yes, absolutely.
How do you stay focused and keep your mind in the game when you are playing that tough player? How do you raise your level?
Ooh, I encourage my athletes to think a lot about intensity. A lot of times, if they are playing the higher ranked opponent, there's going to be a natural intensity within the match. You're wanting to be competitive with that higher ranked opponent. That can help you. That intensity can bring about more focus and help you get into the flow of the match. We want to rely on that. Let's embrace that. Even if they are a higher ranked opponent, let's use that environment to help you get into the flow and do your thing and execute your game plan.
And learn from it as well, right? Like, everybody wants to practice with that better player. Well, here's your opportunity to go out and play against that better player, and it's an opportunity to raise the level of your game and learn something, learn where your weaknesses are and what you need to work on to get better.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on the Tennis Psychology Podcast. If you want more information about one-on-one mental performance coaching with Jaclyn or any of our mental performance coaches, visit peaksports.com. And if you want more information about articles and podcasts, videos, you can jump over to sportspsychologytennis.com. Thanks for joining us.